What up, folks? Welcome to another episode of Those Two Dudes. It's that boy Josh.
It's that dude Ruben.
Man, we got a lot on the plate. We got some major news. I know Josh is pumped about this big news. College football world. There's serious talks about expanding to 12 teams in the college football playoffs.
So today, the 4-member working group officially sent off their proposal for an expanded 12-team playoff. It's big for anybody not named Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma, maybe you throw them in there, Notre Dame. But other than 5 or 6 teams, this is huge news. Not only for the rest of the Power 5. I mean, it is big news for them too, because I'll go into detail about the proposed expansion plan, but it's big news also for the group of 5, the smaller schools that no matter what they do, go undefeated or whatnot, see UCF, see Cincinnati, no matter what they do, they never get in. So it's big news for every team. It's a great day if you're a fan of one of the big schools that get stepped on quite a bit. It's a 12-team proposal, so it's just the 6 highest ranked champions, not the 5 Power 5 champs plus the highest group of 5, just the 6 highest ranked conference champions. Now, it's not official yet. They just, the working group, which is a 4-team group that includes the SEC commish, the Big 12 commissioner, Mountain West, Big 12, SEC, and Notre Dame's AD. They're the working group. They're the ones that have been working on this. They're the ones that had the 63 models they were looking at a few weeks ago or however long ago it was. They've been working on this. Now they're sending it off to the 11-member management committee, and that they'll meet next Friday. So it looks like this proposal will go through. As far as when it goes into place, it won't happen this college football season, and I don't think next year. The current deal doesn't end until 2025, but it looks like this can be done as soon as 2023. So I'm hoping that happens. That's only 2 years away. What if the college football playoff had expanded to 12 or 16 teams initially when the BCS era came to an end? If it did expand from the get-go, do you think Bama and Clemson would be as dominant as they are today?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, I do. It's not even close. I don't care how much you sugarcoat Coastal Carolina or UCF or Boise State. They are head and shoulders the better team out of any team in the country. And so yeah, I mean, they don't have to play them to prove that. That's not their responsibility. And I think expanding to 12 teams is ridiculous. I think.
Well, I disagree with all of what you said. One, you'd have more parity. Why? Because you have more access into the playoffs. What is all over TV? Playoffs. Who do they talk about? The playoff team. So you'd be talking about more teams. You'd be talking about perhaps Texas.
So you're right. So you would have more parity. By more parity, you would hear them talk less about teams like Notre Dame, like Texas, like Michigan. You would have less talk about them and more talk about the other schools. But again, teams like Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, it's very top heavy, and there's a big drop off from the top 3 best teams in the country into everybody else.
But part of the reason is since this college football playoff era began, this is kind of when these teams have taken over. They're the teams getting all the recruits. Why are they getting all the recruits? It's because they're the teams in the playoffs every year. If you give more conferences access to the playoffs, specifically Pac-12, maybe the Big 12, whatever, you get teams like USC or Oregon in the playoffs. Right, as is, you have tons of stud athletes from the state of California leaving to go to Ohio State, leaving to go to Bama. If you have those teams in the playoffs, there's a good chance they'll
look, and you're absolutely right. You know, in a perfect world, in a world with morals, in an NCAA with morals, yes. Balance-wise, once you take away playoff opportunities for the top dogs and spread them out evenly, ideally you're going to get more recruits. But don't be a fool. That's not how the world works. Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, Miami, they still have more money than these little schools. So even though you're taking away playoff chances, that doesn't take away their practice facilities, their chances of getting seen by the NFL more, and by getting more money, just getting paid under the table. That is still a possibility by these boosters. Don't fool yourself.
Tons of talent from the state of Texas is a well-known fact. They're going to Ohio State. They're going to Bama right now. They're not even signing with Texas. With bigger access to the playoffs, with 12 teams, 16 teams, there's a good chance Texas would have been in there a few times. Texas gets their name out. They're competing for the playoffs. Players stay home. They go to Texas. They go to USC. That takes away some from some of the talent that Alabama and Ohio State are pulling in right now.
No, and I get that. What I'm saying is, you're assuming that these recruits want to go to school to make the playoffs with their team. But again, a lot of these players aren't going to school for that reason. They're going to school for themselves, to show out, because they're getting paid under the table.
Hey, making the playoffs is absolutely one of the hugest selling points. That is one of the big
Don't fool yourself. That is not true at all. It's a big selling point. It's not the main one.
Why would you go be third on the depth chart when you can stay home and play for the Texas Longhorns and make the playoffs, get just as much limelight, and get yourself recognized by the NFL scouts? I don't know how much it helps the little guys, but I know it's going to help some.
I feel like we both agree on the same thing, but we both agree in different ways. You're agreeing it's going to take away from the big schools and spread out the wealth with these recruits to kind of make everything on an even keel, to have, to pick up these lower schools, to give them more opportunities. I agree with you, but we don't agree on the schools that are getting lifted up. You're saying it's, the G5 schools, right? Like, you're thinking it could help some of these schools out?
It'll help both. It's going to help. It helps everybody.
Look, I think it's going to help out the Power 5 schools that aren't the top schools. So I think it's going to help out, I think it's going to help out Texas Tech. I think it's going to help out Arkansas, Mississippi State, Virginia, just like smaller schools in the Power 5.
Less known schools in the Power 5 are schools that don't do as well as far as competing for the playoffs. With 12 teams and 6 at-large teams now being able to go to the playoffs, you could go 9-3 in the SEC and still have a really good chance at making the playoffs. So like if you're a 9-3 Mississippi State, a 9-3 Northwestern, you're going to the playoffs because you're going to be one of those top 6 at-large seeds, most likely.
Yeah, and those are the teams that I think that's going to help out. Because, when they see, like Indiana had a great year this year. They never have a great year in football. They finished in the top 10, I think. Dude, if you make the playoffs the next year, recruits going to see that, oh man, that was my school I was considering, but they suck at football. They made the playoffs. I get to stay in a Power 5 conference, and you're going to see more and more parity within the Power 5. I don't see much change within smaller schools.
Look, you're still having to compete with Ohio State, Michigan, and all those schools, where if you go to, say, Cincinnati or UCF, if there was a 12-team format right now, they've been in the playoffs last year. They likely be in the playoffs this year. This is going to allow smaller schools to build their program, get their name out there. If these kids see them in the playoffs for multiple years running, they're going to be able to build a dynasty within themselves over there at one of these smaller schools. I think UCF has a prime opportunity, having Coach Malzahn over there now. If your team say 8-2, your season's over. You're not going to the playoffs. But with this new format, you still have an opportunity 8-2. Those last 2 games of the year, they still mean something. You're still in that playoff hunt now.
Out of a lesser school you're talking about, like a G5 school?
Oh, no, I'm talking about, say, like an 8-2 Mississippi State or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. I think ideally you want to just make it to your conference championship game. Whether you win or lose that, you're putting yourself in prime position to make the overall playoff, assuming it's a 12-team playoff.
As long as you're like, 9-3, 10-2, you make the conference championship, you're probably going to the playoffs, and it becomes more about seeding at that point than anything else.
I understand you want everybody to play fair. You want everyone to give a shot. You want to give everybody a participation certificate. I get that.
I just want everybody to have any team that's in any sports league should have an opportunity to compete for that sports league's championship.
I mean, look.
Whatever. Another place I think it helps, expanding your audience. People have been tuning out of the college football playoffs. So last year's national championship game, it was its lowest viewership ever for a college football championship game. I guess since, I don't know, maybe the BCS, I'm not exactly sure, but what I read, it was the lowest viewed championship game since the Oklahoma USC game in like '05. So people are tuning out because it's the same teams in there every single year. What you do with this, you get more teams in there, you get more fan bases involved, you get more parts of the country involved. So your audience grows, more eyeballs are on the games, your audience gets bigger. I think that's going to happen. So I think that's another positive.
So are you saying 12 team all in, or are you compromising and say, okay, well, what if they come to a compromise and say 6 teams? Would that be okay, 6 teams?
No, because I don't think that's going to give everybody access. I'll be okay with 8. The one that most people thought was coming was an 18 playoff, and the playoff that they had been talking about for the longest was a 18 playoff with all 5 Power 5 conference champs, the highest ranked group of 5 conference champ, and then 2 at larges. I'd be fine with that.
I wouldn't be fine with that. I wouldn't be fine with that because, for the example that we've just been using about, the Pac-12, I'm not convinced that both at larges aren't more deserving of a playoff berth than the Pac-12 champion. That's what I'm saying. Just because you're a conference champion should not guarantee you a spot in the playoffs.
I see what you're saying. Well, the reason I disagree with that is the committee. I hate the idea of people deciding who should be in the playoffs. I'd rather it just be played out on the field, and then you take that team. In the 12-team format, they're going to rank the 6 highest conferences, 6 at large bids. So they're still deciding 6 at large. Who are the next highest ranked 6 teams out of the besides the conference champions? So they have a large impact. They'll still have a large impact. And I'm guessing that might be part of the reason also that they're going to 12 is because I'm sure they still want their voices to be at the forefront of what of ESPN and all that stuff.
You do 12. How does the format play out? Do the first 2 teams or the first 4 seeds get buys?
So what it is this. So you got your 6 highest ranked conference champions, and then you get 6 at large, the next highest ranked 16. 4 highest ranked conference champions of the 6 conference champions, the 4 highest, they get buys. 5 through 12 will play in the first round at the 5, 6, 7, and 8 home field advantage for those teams. So you'll have home games in the first round, and then in the second round, you're back into the bowl games format.
Where does this leave regular bowl games? Where does this leave the Alamo Bowl, the Cotton Bowl? Well, the Cotton Bowl is, I guess, traditionally used for playoff spot anyway. But where does it leave, the other lesser known bowls?
Yeah, it's a good question. According to Brett McMurphy, you can expect 4 to 10 bowl games to be dropping out, to be done away with. I think in the next year or maybe 2 years, maybe when the playoff is officially expanded.
So I'm assuming like the Poinsettia Bowl or like the AutoZone Brake Tires Bowl, or, the Cheez-Its Bowl, like bowls like that.
Bowls like that, yeah. Some of those will disappear. And I think that's good. There was too many bowl games. Back in the 80s, I think there were like half the bowl games there are now. Like they just started making bowl games just to make an extra little cash or something.
I'm assuming there's going to be less a break than there traditionally is from their bowl game, from the conference championship or the end of their regular season to the time they play their bowl game. Yeah. It's going to be less of a break.
Playoff games could possibly start like December 11th or something like that.
So what you don't want to do is you don't want to have these bowl games go further into January or even God forbid end of January, early February, and then have it compete with the NFL playoffs. That's what you don't want to happen.
Definitely not. And that's why, again, you're going to see less time between championship games and the start of the playoffs, start of the bowl season. This is a winner for everybody involved, I think. And I'm excited about it, especially.
Yeah, it's a winner if you have season tickets to Texas State and you go to all of their intramural lacrosse practices. I'm okay with it going to 6 teams playoff.
What does that do? No,
it's not what does it do. It's that you don't need that many teams to determine a winner.
Then why even add 2 more? Why not just leave it at 4? I mean, what would be the point of going to 6?
Look, if it were to me, I would leave it at 4. I'm saying if you are going to expand it, then throw it to 6.
So you don't care about sports leagues giving a path to all of their members to the championship?
No, I don't. I don't care. And I'll tell you why I don't care. Because
say the NBA was like, you know what, Eastern Conference, y'all weren't so good this year.
Well, that's different. Basketball is different than football. You know that. You know basketball is different than football.
You can't have a sports league where you're showing favoritism to some of the teams within your
It's not favoritism. It's not favoritism. It's not. You're just you're not with the big boys.
All about the money. No, what do you mean? It's the same league. It's the FBS.
No, nobody has interest in watching WAC conference games or MAC conference games compared to the Big Ten and SEC. That it just is what it is.
It's not about who wants to watch these games.
Of course it is, because that's where the money comes from, the viewer.
I'm saying you got to stay true to the sport. It can't just all be about money. It's a sport at the end of the day.
Money makes the world go round. You're being naive if you don't think that. So you're telling me that Central Michigan has every right, based on their schedule, to compete for a national championship as, say, Florida.
Yeah, they're in the football bowl subdivision. They beat Oklahoma State like 2 years ago.
Dude, what? Oklahoma State? What? So you're giving me one team. Florida has to go through that gauntlet every single year, all season. Central Michigan has to go through that gauntlet once a year, every 3 years.
Florida has an opportunity to make the playoffs every year, as should Central Michigan.
Oh, man.
How are we going to decide they don't deserve an opportunity? Let them play it out on the field.
By that logic, who are we to determine, how good they are by watching the game, by watching everything on the field? Who are we? Let them play it out. Why do we have rankings at all?
Because it drives fan entertainment or fan interaction. It gets fans involved as far as, hey, why are the rankings like, why is my team 20 when this team's 17 and when we beat them in week 3?
Oh my God. Go to part two because this one right here, we got to take a breath.
The Sun Belt Conference. Don't be surprised if you see one of our members in the playoff pretty soon.
And this is the root of why you're pro all this, just because of Texas State.
I wanted to see David versus Goliath. Let's go.
All right, guys. This is part 1. Go over to part 2. Check out part 2. You're going to like it. It's that dude, Josh.
That's that dude, Ruben.
Check it out. Go to part 2 right now. Go.